I found a tube of personal lubricant in my husband's car. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just swapped it with industrial superglue. And what happened next? The firefighters had to pull them apart, naked, stuck together, screaming in front of the entire neighborhood. This is the story of how I turned my betrayal into their public humiliation and made sure they paid for every lie, every stolen dollar, and every broken promise. I'm so glad you're here. I never thought betrayal would smell like lavender hand cream. For 39 years, my husband Arthur's hands carried the quiet scent of cedarwood soap and old paper, remnants of his work as a rare book dealer. He'd come home each evening, kiss my temple, and hang his coat with the same gentle precision he used to turn the pages of a first edition Austen. Our life in Beacon Hill wasn't flashy, but it was ours. Quiet dinners, Sunday walks along the Charles River, and the soft hum of the radiator in our brownstone that sounded like a lullaby. I believed in us. I believed in him. That belief cracked the morning I found the hotel keycard tucked inside his winter scarf. It wasn't hidden. Not really. Just slipped between the folds like a forgotten receipt. I'd been laundering his coat after his business trip to Boston. Yes, Boston, the city we lived in, when the plastic rectangle slid into my palm. The Grand Meridian Hotel, room 712, check-in, last Thursday. The same night he told me he was staying late at the shop to catalog a new acquisition. My fingers didn't shake, not then, but something inside me went very still, like the moment before a storm breaks. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I returned the keycard to the scarf, hung it back in the hall closet, and made tea. Earl Grey, his favorite. As I stirred honey into the cup, I watched him through the kitchen window. He was pruning the rose bushes in the backyard, humming softly. The picture of domestic peace. But I saw it now. The slight bounce in his step, the way his eyes kept drifting toward his phone on the patio table. He wasn't just tired, he was expectant. That night, while he slept, I went through his briefcase. Nothing overt, no love letters, no lingerie, just ledgers, invoices, and a small notebook filled with his neat script, mostly inventory notes. But on the last page, scribbled in pencil, M, tonight, usual spot, bring the papers. Below it, a time, 8:30 p.m., and a location, Café Lumière. I knew that cafe. It was tucked away in the South End, all velvet booths and dim lighting, romantic, private, not the kind of place you took a client. The next day, I followed him. I wore a wide-brim hat and sunglasses, ridiculous in April, but necessary. I parked 2 blocks down and watched from a bench across the street. At 8:27 p.m., Arthur arrived. He smoothed his jacket, checked his reflection in the cafe window, and stepped inside. 5 minutes later, she walked up. Marina. My daughter-in-law. She wore a cream trench coat and heels that clicked against the pavement like a metronome. Her hair was loose, falling over one shoulder in a way I'd never seen her wear it at family dinners. When Arthur saw her, his face lit up not with the polite warmth of a father-in-law, but with the bright, hungry look of a man in love. They sat in a corner booth, no touching, not at first, but the way they leaned in, the way their hands brushed over the table as they passed sugar, it was intimate. Too intimate. I took photos with my phone, zooming in until I could see the curve of her smile, the way his thumb traced the rim of his coffee cup. When they left, they didn't say goodbye at the door. They walked together toward the parking garage, shoulders nearly touching. I drove home in silence, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind screaming. Back in the house, I checked his phone while he showered. He'd left it on the nightstand, screen unlocked, a rare lapse. I opened his messages. Nothing. His email?
Empty. But then I saw it. A hidden folder labeled Archive. Inside, dozens of photos. Marina laughing on a beach. Marina in a red dress. Marina wrapped in his coat. And one video. I pressed play. It was nighttime. They were in what looked like a hotel room. Marina sat on the edge of the bed, unzipping her boots. Arthur stood behind her, hands on her shoulders. "You're sure about this?" he asked, voice low. She turned, smiling. "I've never been more sure of anything, Arthur." Then she kissed him. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply closed the folder, placed the phone back exactly as I had found it, and went to the kitchen to make dinner. But something had shifted. The air in our home felt thinner, charged with a static I couldn't ignore. Over the next week, I watched, I listened, I collected. A receipt for matching monogrammed luggage, A and M. A charge on our joint card for a weekend in Nantucket, 2 tickets, 1 room. A voicemail he thought I hadn't heard. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, my love." And then the final blow. I found the legal documents. He'd left them in his study, tucked inside a folder marked estate planning. But it wasn't about wills or trusts. It was a transfer agreement. My bakery, the Honeycomb, signed over to a shell corporation. And listed as co-signers, Arthur and Marina. The bakery I'd built from scratch, the one I'd mortgaged our home for, the one I'd run through chemo, through sleepless nights, through every storm life threw at us. He was giving it to her, to them. That night I sat at the kitchen table, the document spread before me like a death warrant. The clock ticked. Outside, a dog barked, normal sounds in an unraveling world. Arthur came in, loosening his tie. "You're up late," he said, pouring himself a glass of water. "I couldn't sleep," I replied, folding the paper slowly. He didn't ask why. He didn't seem to notice the tremor in my hands. Or maybe he just didn't care. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I'd loved since I was 22, the man who held my hair back when I was sick, the man who taught our son to ride a bike. And I realized I didn't know him at all. The next morning, I called a private investigator. His name was Elias. Quiet, efficient, with eyes that missed nothing. I handed him the photos, the receipts, the printout of the transfer agreement.
"I need to know everything," I said. "Where they go, what they say, what they plan." He nodded. "Consider it done." 3 days later, he sent me a video. Arthur and Marina in a lawyer's office. She was signing papers. He was smiling. "Once this is finalized," he said, "Juliet won't have a say. She's too trusting." Marina laughed. "Poor thing. She still thinks you love her." The words hit like ice water. But the worst was yet to come. That evening, Arthur came home with a bottle of champagne. "We should celebrate," he said, popping the cork. "Big things coming." I forced a smile. "Oh? What kind of things?" He poured 2 glasses. "Let's just say our future is secure." I took the glass. Didn't drink. "Arthur," I said softly, "do you remember our first date? You took me to that little Italian place on Hanover Street. You spilled wine on your shirt." He chuckled. "How could I forget? You laughed so hard you cried. I loved you so much that night. I still do." His smile faltered just for a second. Then he clinked his glass against mine. "To us." I went to bed that night with a plan forming in my mind. Not revenge, justice. The next day, I told him I was visiting my sister in Vermont. "I'll be gone 3 days," I said, packing a small suitcase. "Don't worry about the bakery. I've hired extra help." He kissed my cheek. "Drive safe." The moment his car turned the corner, I called Elias. "They're meeting tonight," he said. "Same hotel, room 712. I nodded.
Good. I drove to the Grand Meridian myself, checked into the room across the hall under a fake name. Then I waited. At 9:15 p.m., I heard their voices in the hallway, laughter, the click of the door closing. I waited 10 minutes, then I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Housekeeping? Still nothing. So I used the master key Elias had procured. The room was dim, lit only by the city glow through the curtains. They were on the bed, tangled in sheets, Arthur's back to the door. Marina's eyes flew open when she saw me. "Juliet!" she gasped. I didn't speak. I just walked to the nightstand, picked up Arthur's phone, and began recording. "What are you doing?" Arthur scrambled up, clutching a pillow to his chest. "I'm proving what I already know," I said calmly. Marina pulled the sheet tighter. "This isn't what it looks like." "No." I turned the phone toward them. "Then tell me, Marina, why are you signing papers to steal my bakery?" Her face went white. Arthur stepped forward. "Juliet, please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "You've made your choice." I left the room, phone still recording their panicked whispers. Back home, I uploaded everything to a secure cloud, printed copies, made duplicates. Then I went to the garage. In Arthur's car, in the glove compartment, I found what I expected, a tube of personal lubricant, half used. I smiled. I went inside, retrieved a tube of industrial superglue from my baking supplies, used for sealing cake boards, and carefully emptied the lubricant, filled it with glue, shook it, tested it on a spare cake pan. Smooth, convincing. I returned it to the glove box. The next morning, I told Arthur I was going to the farmer's market. "Be back by noon," I said. He kissed my forehead. "Don't forget the lavender honey." "I won't." I didn't go to the market. I went to Café Lumière and waited. At 11:30 a.m., Marina walked in. I followed her to the restroom. When she came out, I was waiting by the sink. "Juliet!" Her voice trembled. I held up my phone, playing the audio from the hotel. "You called me poor thing. Now tell me, how does it feel to be the one who's poor? Poor in decency, poor in loyalty, poor in soul." She tried to push past me. I grabbed her wrist. "Sign those papers, Marina. Take the bakery. But know this, you'll never keep it, and you'll never have him." Her eyes filled with tears. "He loves me." "No," I said softly. "He loves the idea of starting over with someone younger, easier. But when the money runs out, and it will, he'll leave you too." I let go. She fled. That evening, Arthur came home late. "A long day," he muttered, heading for the shower. I heard the car start in the driveway an hour later. He was going to her. I waited. At 2 a.m., the phone rang. It was the fire department. "There's been an incident," the dispatcher said. "Your husband and a woman were found unconscious in his vehicle outside Café Lumière. They're at Mass General." I thanked her and hung up. Then I smiled. The superglue had done its work. The morning after the fire department incident, I woke before dawn with the scent of burnt oil still clinging to the curtains. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no distant traffic, just the hollow hum of shame hanging in the air like fog. I made coffee, black and bitter, and sat at the kitchen table where Arthur had once carved our initials into the wood during a summer storm 30 years ago. Now that same table felt like a witness stand. By 8 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Elias, the investigator. "They're at Mass General," he said without preamble. "Both of them, glued together from the waist down. Firefighters had to cut their clothes off in front of half the block. Your son was on the call." My son, Daniel.
I closed my eyes. Of course he was. He'd been a firefighter for 12 years. Brave, principled, the kind of man who ran toward danger while others fled. And last night, he'd run straight into the wreckage of his own family. He didn't say a word on scene, Elias continued, just stared at them like he'd seen a ghost. Then he ordered his team to wrap them in thermal blankets and get them out fast, but it was too late. Mrs. Cho from across the street filmed the whole thing. It's already on TikTok. I thanked him and hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I showered, dressed in a simple navy dress, and drove to the hospital. The waiting room was packed, not with patients, but with gawkers, neighbors, former customers from the bakery, even the barista from the cafe down the street. They fell silent as I walked in, eyes darting away like guilty children. I ignored them and went straight to the nurse's station. "Juliet Roberts, I'm here to see my husband and his companion." The nurse, a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Lena, gave me a look that was equal parts pity and judgment. "They're in room 314, but maybe you should wait. They're still being treated." "I'll wait outside," I said. I sat on a plastic chair in the hallway, back straight, hands folded in my lap. From inside the room, I could hear muffled voices, Arthur's low and pleading, Marina's sharp and panicked. "She did this on purpose," Marina hissed. "That glue, it wasn't lubricant, it was glue." "Shut up," Arthur snapped. "You're making it worse." "No, you're making it worse. You promised me she wouldn't find out. You said she was too trusting. And you said you loved me. I loved the idea of your money, Arthur, not you." A long silence, then a choked sob. I almost smiled. At 10:17 a.m., the door opened. A doctor stepped out, latex gloves in hand. "Mrs. Roberts?" "Yes." He hesitated. "We've managed to separate them. No permanent damage, but significant skin irritation. They'll need topical ointment for several days." "May I see them?" He nodded, though his eyes said, "You shouldn't." I walked in. Arthur sat on the edge of one bed, wrapped in a hospital gown, his face ashen. Marina lay on the other, eyes red, hair tangled, clutching a thin blanket to her chest. Neither looked at me. "I brought you something," I said softly. I placed 2 small tubes on the bedside table between them. Special ointment for the burns. Arthur reached for one. "Juliet, I can explain." "No," I said gently. "You really can't." Marina glared at me. "You're sick. You could have killed us." I tilted my head. "Could I? Or did you do that yourselves the moment you decided to steal my life?" I turned to Arthur. "The bakery transfer? The Shell Corporation? The forged signatures? Did you think I wouldn't notice when my bank statements stopped showing deposits?" His mouth opened, then closed. "You sold our mountain cabin," I continued, voice steady. "The one where we scattered Daniel's dog's ashes. The one where you proposed to me under the stars. You sold it to fund your little love nest with my daughter-in-law." Marina flinched. "He said you didn't care about it anymore." "I care about everything, especially betrayal." I picked up one of the ointment tubes and held it out to her. "Go ahead, apply it. It'll help." She snatched it, unscrewed the cap, and squeezed a thick yellow paste onto her palm. She winced as she rubbed it in. Then she screamed. "It burns! Oh God, it's burning!" Arthur grabbed the other tube, applied it, and immediately recoiled, cursing. "What the hell is this?" "Mustard," I said simply. "The kind I use in my honey-glazed ham. very potent. Nurses rushed in, doctors shouted, Marina sobbed, clawing at her skin. Arthur stumbled to the sink, splashing water on his stomach. I stood in the doorway, watching. You wanted to take everything from me, I said, voice low but clear. Your business, my home, my son's trust, but you forgot one thing. They both looked at me, eyes wide with pain and fear. I built that bakery with my own hands. I survived cancer alone while you read history books. I raised a son who still calls me every Sunday. You thought I was soft, but soft things don't survive 40 years in this world. I stepped closer. You wanted a war? You got one. And in my war, the weapons aren't knives or guns. They're patience, precision, and justice. I turned to leave. Juliet, wait, Arthur called out, voice breaking. Please, don't tell Daniel. I paused at the door. Too late, Arthur. He already saw you, naked, glued to his wife, in the bed you shared with me for 39 years. Marina let out a wail. I didn't look back. Outside, Daniel was leaning against the hospital wall, arms crossed, staring at the ground. He looked 10 years older. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, he whispered, why didn't you tell me? I walked over and took his hand, because I needed proof, not just for me, for you. He nodded slowly. I filed for divorce this morning before I even got here. Good, I said. Now come home. We drove back in silence. The bakery was closed, first time in 15 years. But as we pulled up, I saw a crowd gathered outside. Not gawkers, customers, holding signs. We stand with Juliet. Honeycomb forever. Real women bake truth. Mrs. Dawson from down the street waved me over. We heard what happened. We're not buying from anyone else until you reopen. I hugged her, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. That evening, Daniel helped me clean the kitchen. We scrubbed the stove, aired out the smoke, and reset the ovens. As we worked, he asked, "What are you going to do about the bakery?" I'm going to expand it, open a second location, maybe even a third. He smiled faintly. Need a partner? I looked at him, my son, my anchor, and nodded. Only if you promise never to bring your wife near the flour bins. We laughed. It was a small sound, fragile, but real. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table again. This time, I carved a new set of initials into the wood, J plus D. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I want full control of the honeycomb chain, and I want Arthur and Marina served with restraining orders. They're not to come within 500 feet of me, my son, or any of my businesses. Consider it done, he replied. By noon, I reopened the bakery. The line stretched around the block. The weeks after the hospital incident settled like dust after a storm, quiet, but thick with the residue of what had been shattered. The bakery, once a sanctuary of warmth and sugar-dusted calm, had become a fortress of resilience. Customers didn't just come for pastries anymore. They came to witness the quiet triumphs of a woman who'd been wronged and refused to vanish. The honeycomb was no longer just a shop. It was a symbol. And I, Juliet Roberts, was no longer just a baker. I was a reckoning wrapped in an apron. But justice, I was learning, wasn't a single act. It was a process. And Arthur and Marina weren't done fighting. 3 days after the mustard incident, my lawyer called. They're countersuing you, he said, voice tight. Arthur claims you tampered with his personal property, caused bodily harm, and violated his privacy. Marina's alleging emotional distress. I almost laughed. Let them sue.
I've got 40 years of receipts, texts, audio recordings, and 2 witnesses who saw them glued together in my son's fire truck. Still, the legal threat loomed like a shadow over the ovens. I couldn't afford a prolonged battle, not financially, not emotionally. So I did what I always done. I baked. But this time, I baked with strategy. I invited every loyal customer to a community appreciation day. Free coffee, half-price tarts, live acoustic guitar in the corner. And on every table, a small printed card. Support local, support truth. Beneath it, a QR code linking to a GoFundMe I'd quietly launched. Not for legal fees, but for a women's entrepreneurship fund in my name. The story went viral before noon. By evening, we'd raised $27,000. Arthur saw it. Of course he did. He called that night, voice trembling with rage disguised as concern. "Juliet, this is embarrassing. You're dragging our family name through the mud." "Our family?" I said softly. "You lost that right the moment you kissed my daughter-in-law in a hotel room." He hung up. 2 days later, Marina showed up at the bakery. She wore sunglasses and a scarf as if she could hide behind fabric and tinted glass. She stood by the display case, staring at the lemon tarts, Daniel's favorite. When I approached, she flinched. "I just want to talk," she whispered. "There's nothing to say," I replied, wiping the counter with a cloth that smelled of vanilla and resolve. "I made a mistake," she said, tears welling. "Arthur, he promised me things. He said you didn't care about him anymore, that you were cold." I leaned forward, voice low but sharp as a paring knife. "You didn't make a mistake, Marina. You made a choice. And you chose to betray the woman who taught you how to braid chala, who held your hair back when you were sick, who called you daughter." She looked away. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't unglue skin," I said. "Sorry doesn't erase the audio of you calling me that old hag while planning to steal my life's work." She left without buying anything. But she left something behind. A folded note tucked under her coffee cup.
"I'll testify. If it goes to court, I'll tell the truth." I burned the note in the oven that night, not because I didn't believe her, but because I no longer needed her. The real battle wasn't in a courtroom. It was in the court of public truth. I began posting short videos on the bakery's Instagram, just me in my kitchen kneading dough, voice calm but firm. No dramatic music, no tearful confessions, just facts. On March 14th, my husband transferred $87,000 from our joint account to a shell company called A&M Holdings. On April 2nd, he and my daughter-in-law checked into the Grand Meridian under false names. On April 5th, they were found glued together in his car, naked, humiliated, and exposed. Each post ended with, "Truth doesn't need embellishment. It just needs to be spoken." The video spread. Local news picked it up. A podcast host reached out. "Can you tell your story on Scandal and Sugar?" I agreed, but only if Daniel could be there too. The interview aired on a Tuesday. We sat side by side in the studio, him in his firefighter uniform, me in my flour-dusted cardigan. The host asked gentle questions, but the subtext was clear. How do you rebuild after betrayal from 2 people you loved? Daniel spoke first. "I thought I knew my wife. I thought I knew my father. But what I really knew was the version they wanted me to see." His voice cracked. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing I never really saw them at all. Then he turned to me. "But Mom, she never stopped seeing me, even when I was blind." I reached for his hand. Love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when the world falls apart. The episode got 2 million views in 48 hours. Arthur called the next morning, not to threaten, not to plead, but to surrender. "I'll sign the divorce," he said, voice hollow. "I'll relinquish all claims to the bakery. Just don't let them publish the photos." "What photos?" I asked. "The ones from the hotel balcony, the ones Thomas took." I paused. "I don't have those." He went silent. Then quietly, "Marina does." Ah, so that was her leverage. I called Marina that afternoon. She answered on the first ring. "You have the balcony photos." "Yes," she admitted, "and the video of him saying he never loved you." "Why keep them?" "Because I want him to suffer," she said coldly, "not you." We met at a park bench the next day. She handed me a flash drive. Everything, every lie, every plan, every kiss. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who'd worn my son's ring now looked like a ghost of herself. "What will you do now?" I asked. She shrugged. "Start over, far away. Maybe open a cafe in Portland." "Don't name it after flowers," I said gently. "That's my territory." She almost smiled. That evening, I sat with Daniel in the back office of the bakery. We watched the balcony video together. Arthur's hand on her waist, the kiss, the way he whispered, "She'll never suspect a thing." Daniel didn't cry. He just closed the laptop and said, "Let's expand the bakery. Let's open that second location." So we did. We found a space downtown, big windows, high ceilings, room for a teaching kitchen. I named it The Second Rise because dough, like people, can fall and still rise again. On opening day, the line wrapped around the block. Reporters came. Customers brought flowers. Mrs. Dotson handed me a jar of her homemade lavender honey. "For the new chapter," she said. As I cut the ribbon, Daniel stood beside me, arm around my shoulders. "You did it, Mom." "No," I said. "We did." But the story wasn't over. Because 3 days later, a letter arrived. Not from Arthur, not from Marina, from the bank. It seems Arthur had taken out a $200,000 loan in my name 6 months ago, using forged documents, my social security number, and a fake signature. The money funneled into a cryptocurrency scam that had just collapsed. I was liable. The bakery expansion? Frozen. My credit? Ruined. My savings? Garnished. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once carved our initials, and stared at the letter until the words blurred. Arthur hadn't just betrayed me. He'd buried a bomb in the foundation of my future, and it had just detonated. The bank letter sat on my kitchen table like a live grenade. Outside, rain tapped against the window pane, a soft, relentless rhythm that matched the dread coiling in my chest. Arthur hadn't just stolen from me. He'd weaponized my name, my trust, my very identity, and used it to build a financial trapdoor beneath my feet. $200,000. Gone. Not to a lover, not to a whim, but to a digital black hole of cryptocurrency scams, and I was the one left holding the bag. I didn't panic, not outwardly. I made tea, I fed the cat, I watered the orchids on the windowsill. But inside, something cold and sharp had taken root. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was annihilation. And Arthur, from his hiding place somewhere in the city with Marina, had handed me the blueprint for my own destruction. But he'd made one fatal mistake. He'd underestimated what a woman with nothing left to lose could do. I called my lawyer first, then Daniel, then Elias, the investigator. By noon, we were all sitting in the back office of the Second Rise, the scent of cinnamon and yeast doing little to mask the tension in the air. My lawyer said
He forged your signature on the loan documents, used your social security number, even mimicked your handwriting on the notarization form. Daniel's jaw tightened. That's not just fraud, Ma. That's identity theft, federal offense. Elias leaned forward. I've been tracking his movements. He's not staying with Marina. He's holed up in a cheap motel near the airport. And he's been meeting with a man named Carl Voss, known crypto grifter. They're trying to launder what's left. I looked at the three of them, my son, my legal shield, my eyes in the dark, and felt something shift. Not hope, not yet, but purpose. I want everything, I said quietly. Every transaction, every message, every lie. Elias nodded, already on it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once carved our initials, and opened my laptop. I logged into the bakery's business account, then into the city's public records portal. I searched for property deeds, business licenses, court filings, and then I found it. A shell corporation, Aurora Holdings LLC, registered 2 months ago. Address? A P.O. box in Nevada. But the listed manager? Not Arthur, Marina. And the bank account linked to it? Funded by the very loan taken out in my name. They weren't just stealing from me. They were building a new life on my bones. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the courthouse. Not as a victim, as a plaintiff. I filed a civil suit, not just for a divorce, but for fraud, identity theft, emotional distress, and unjust enrichment. I attached every piece of evidence, the hotel receipts, the audio of them plotting, the forged loan documents, the shell corporation records, and I added one more thing, a sworn affidavit from Marina herself, the one I'd given her on the park bench, confirming Arthur's coercion and her role in the deception. Then I did something bolder. I walked into the local news station, not for pity, for pressure. I'm Juliet Roberts, told the reporter, calm and clear, owner of the Honeycomb Bakery, and my husband stole my identity to fund a cryptocurrency scam with my daughter-in-law. I'm sharing my story so no one else falls for this. The segment aired that evening. By midnight, my phone was blowing up, not with hate, but with support. Other women came forward. He did the same to me. I lost my house. Thank you for speaking up. Arthur called the next day. His voice was ragged, desperate. Juliet, please, drop the lawsuit. I'll pay it back. I'll disappear. You already disappeared. From my life. From your son's. From your own conscience. Now you'll disappear from my future. Permanently. I hung up. 2 days later, the bank froze the fraudulent loan, not because they cared about me, but because the media attention made them look negligent. My credit wasn't restored overnight, but the garnishment stopped. The bakery expansion could breathe again. Then came the breakthrough. Elias called. Voss flipped. He's cooperating with the FBI. Says Arthur pressured him into the scheme, promised him a cut, but Voss kept most of the money. Arthur is broke and scared. I asked, where is he now? He's trying to flee, booked a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. I smiled. Let him go. Daniel frowned. Mom, if he leaves the country, we can't prosecute. I don't want him in prison. I want him irrelevant. And so, I let him run. But I didn't stop there. I took the evidence, the full dossier, and sent it to every creditor, every business partner, every friend Arthur had ever named. I didn't accuse. I just presented facts, attached screenshots, included Marina's affidavit. Within a week, his credit was shredded. His old engineering license was under review. Even his golf club membership was revoked. He wasn't just exposed, he was erased. 6 months later, the second rise was thriving. We'd added cooking classes, hired 3 new staff, and launched a line of frozen pastries sold in local grocery stores. Daniel had moved into the apartment above the shop. Every Sunday we hosted family brunch, open to anyone who needed a table, a meal, and a moment of peace.
One rainy afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a single item, Arthur's wedding ring, tarnished, scratched, and a note. I don't deserve to wear this. Forgive me if you can. If not, I understand. I held the ring in my palm for a long time. Then I walked to the riverbank behind the bakery, the one where Daniel and I used to skip stones as a boy. I drew my arm back and let it fly. It arced through the gray air, caught the light for a second, and then vanished into the dark water with a soft plink. No splash, no echo, just gone. That evening, as I kneaded dough for tomorrow's sourdough, Daniel came in, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You okay, Ma?" I looked up, flour dusting my cheeks like war paint. "Better than okay." He handed me a mug. "What's the secret to your strength?" I smiled. I stopped baking for ghosts. I now bake for the living. And in that warm, flour-dusted kitchen, with my son beside me and the ovens humming their steady song, I knew the truth. Betrayal breaks you open, but what you build in the cracks, that's yours forever. The bakery wasn't just surviving, it was rising. And so was I.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next part of this story. I'm sharing raw, emotional, real-life revenge tales, the kind that keep you up at night and make you whisper, "She didn't just survive, she rewrote the rules." Subscribe now because justice doesn't wait, and neither do I.